Hey y'all, how's it going? I thought I would do a little floss tube extra for celebration of Michelle G. Bendy Stitchy's birthday on March 10th. She doesn't know this, and by the time I put this up on YouTube, it will already be her birthday, but there were several of us behind the scenes that were planning to share what we're working on, you know, patterns of her, stitches, those kinds of things, and finishes of her designs. And as you can see, I've got two that I just finished this week here. One is her berry, Hilde strawberry patch, and the other is a, it's really teeny tiny, was a, like, collaborative Twitch, project, or not project, but she got on Twitch or maybe YouTube Live and had everybody contribute to this pattern, and it's basically a collage, if you will, of all of the motifs from her other designs at the time. So you may actually recognize like the Drama Llama, or this is from the Odd World. This is a gravestone. It's really hard to see with the cat sitting on it, because it was, the other part of this project was when she designed it, she designed a couple of different versions, and I can't remember what the other colorway was, but the Moo the Merrier sulky pack had just come out at like market that year. I think this was a 2022 design. And so she did one version where she basically used all of the colors in that sulky pack. Anyway, this gravestone happened to be the only thing that was in gray. And of course, as you can see, yes, the fabric is pink and green and whatever, but the gray doesn't show up. I mean, it shows up, but not terribly well. She also had in negative space 22 for the year that it was designed, but I left that off. I was trying to decide maybe I would either backstitch something on it. I couldn't really make up my mind, so I just left it as is. And if you also notice, this is stitched 1/1. Most of it is full cross, but there were some places like in the plant where it was so stitch heavy that the stitches weren't, it was becoming a little too bulky. So I did half stitches on some things. I think the cat, but most of it is full cross. So that's why it looks very, very thick, bold. Yeah, but I really, really like it a lot. So this video today, if Astro will let me sit in my chair behind me, I may have to stand up this whole time. This video today is to actually finish these two items. Definitely the berry. We'll see if we've got time. I think I want to do a little pouch, a little project bag or something with the chaos one. And I've picked fabric that I think I'm going to do the bag with, but we'll have to see where we're at, because I know these finishes take a while. And depending on how much I have to stop and start and edit, and especially with this one, using the sewing machine, I don't want all of that noise necessarily in this video, so I'll have to figure out, you know, time-wise, if I can just do the one, or if I do both, or maybe do them as separate finishes. So we'll see how it goes. But just to give you an idea, I had just finished this bag today, and this is an ink circles stitch. So this is the kind of bag I want to do. Obviously it's about the same size as far as the pattern goes, as far as the finished stitch goes. So we'll see if I can get something similar. This pouch I think is about 9 inches by 9 inches roughly. So yeah, so we'll see where we go today, but I definitely want to do the berry finish because I want to, I don't know how many people do berry finishes or how often they stitch something that was designed for a berry finish, but I thought this would be a good tutorial for anyone who might be interested in that kind of thing. The first thing you'll notice is that the pattern is designed to be cut a certain way, so that you are basically stitching it, sewing it shut, and it makes like a cone essentially. So what I'm going to do is, if you aren't familiar with them, Friction makes these pins that are designed to either, like in this case, they actually have, this is actually an eraser tip, but they make friction erasers. But these are also designed that if you add heat to them, like with an iron, the line disappears as well. But I am going to do all of my work on the back as far as drawing and stuff, because then that way, whatever happens, if it doesn't all wash out, erase, come out with the heat, it will be on the back side and nobody will see it. And these aren't like, this looks like a, you know, like what you might think like a felt tip marker is, but they really don't. They're really, really, really kind of faint. I mean, they're designed for people who are using them on fabrics and stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about it like bleeding through or creating just this really dark line that's not going to come out, you know, that kind of thing. They're very, very faint. So the thing that I wanted to point out was, so this, I stitched this on an 18 count. This is an ornament cut, I think, that came from Fortnite Fabrics a long time ago. With berries, you will find that not all berry patterns are the same as far as dimensions. So what you want to make sure is that, like in Michelle's case, she actually put a template line on her pattern where you should basically cut out around the pattern to give yourself enough room. I'm probably going to add another 1/4 inch for sewing for seam purposes, but if you are unsure, I will recommend the one that I know of that I've purchased in the past is Erica Michaels, has several berry patterns, and it seems like every berry pattern she puts out, she puts a template in hers, and she is very good in that those templates are for multiple stitch counts. So she will do a 14 inch or a 14 count, a 16 count, an 18 count, you know, that kind of thing. So that way she, that whatever size fabric you decide to stitch on, you have a template that will cover the design that you know, the size pattern you end up with. So I was pulling out my iPad, but I didn't want you to see because it will have the pattern on it. But on her, I was hoping maybe I could just show kind of a glimpse so you could kind of see, in case you were curious. Like if you thought about buying this pattern, but you weren't really sure, you know, how it would turn out, because, just so you know, her digital, you know, or her PDF, and probably her paper pattern now too, this is the picture. It's just the stitched, like it doesn't show an actual finished object. But if I can do this very, very, very carefully, see, she's got the grid line, she's got the lines that show you where you should mark. So I'm actually going to use this as a guide, but like I said, I am going to add probably another 1/4 inch. So the nice thing with mine is I chose an Aida fabric, which means that I have holes that are squares that I can count very easily. So I'm going to pause you for a second so I can set the iPad down and that I don't show off her pattern, and then I'll be right back and I'll show you what I did. Okay, now that I'm kind of done marking my just kind of reference points, because like I said, I want to go a little bit wider than what Michelle has on her chart, just for stitching for seams. I counted where her end points were. So these were the two side end points. You can kind of barely see my little lines here. This is the bottom end point right here, and then this is the top. And you see how close she got to the top. That, instead of doing a 1/4 inch, I'm probably going to do a 1/2 inch. Because you want enough room that when you cinch this up at the top, that you have enough room that the fabric, that the picture shows, and that the fabric bunches up, but you still have a gap between the top of your pattern and the top, or the center of the top of the berry, so that your pattern shows all the way across the berry. But to start, I'm going to take my ruler here. This is one of those just clear, like this is Dritz. I've had this forever, but it's really nice because it actually does mark 1/4 inches very, very visually, and that the lines are every other, so that way they're not all consistently, you know, black or yellow, so that way I can see very easily. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take her center line here, or dot here, and I'm going to go a 1/4 inch further. So I'm going to go about right here. I'm going to make sure I can see where my mark is. So about right here. Same on both of these sides. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch here, and a 1/4 inch here. And then, like I said, I think I'm going to do a 1/2 inch here, just to be safe, because I really do feel like the room that was left here is not quite enough, in my opinion, so that when the berry's cinched up at the top. So I'm going to do about right there. Now then, her lines coming down on either side of the cone portion, you know, the point, were straight lines. So I'm actually just going to use my ruler and just line up the two points, the two outer points that I made. And then the top, she's got a curve. Now, one of the cheat ways to do this, and it isn't like a true like curve like arc. It's more like a point A to point B, 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 point A to point, you know, till you get kind of that curve. So I'm going to do a little bit of I actually bought, because I am such a dork, I actually bought a protractor a long time ago, so I'm going to attempt to do this with an actual pencil on the top half and see if this actually works. The only thing is I want to make sure I find my center point. So this is about 7 1/4 inches. So the math is kind of tricky. But if I do 1, 2, 3 1/2, and 3/4 is about right there. So if I do that, pull this out just a little bit. This is probably going to be a much bigger, see, that's going to be a much bigger arch than what I really want, which that's okay. Yeah, much bigger than what I really want. So I'm going to then go back, and guys, I am just kind of winging this because I really don't know what I want to do here. But you see how narrow that gets? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of do this, if this makes any kind of sense to anybody, and just kind of follow it by the natural course of just using my hand to like guide it. That's the nice kind of thing about protractors, that you can just kind of make it work for you. And it's not going to be perfect, unfortunately. but just get kind of an arch that I'm kind of comfortable with. There, that's pretty good. So as you can see, I've got multiple lines here. That's okay, not a big deal. I'm going to go with the one that's the least, or the closest that I think. And at the end of the day, that is not going to matter that much. This is the part that you want to make sure is not necessarily straight, but you got what you want out of it as far as your lines go, because those lines need to be pretty on point, straight as possible. So then the other thing, like I told you, gave myself a 1/4 inch. I think I'm going to just eyeball another 1/4 inch. That's probably more like 1/8 of an inch, even outside of this line. And again, it's just to be sure that when I'm sewing this up, that I am not sewing it too close to the pattern, and I'm not doing anything that's going to basically overshoot my pattern. So again, not perfect, doesn't have to be. As I say that, and my brain is making me want to clear up. Correct that. So once you got your cone the size you want it, basically the next step is you can do this again one of two ways. You can sew it. So now I've got my nice little, line that I can use, which I think I am going to sew this on the sewing machine. Or you can hand sew it. Either do something decorative, you can do a running stitch, you can do whatever you want to do. But basically, you're going to sew this to where you have a nice little cone. So I'm going to pause it. Astro is in my chair, so I may have to sew this standing up, but I am going to choose this method of actually sewing this. I've only done one other berry and I hand sewed it. This one I'm going to try with the sewing machine. I don't think there's going to be harm or any kind of, whatever to that. I'm just going to be kind of curious to see, especially at the pointed end, how well, when I turn it inside out, how well that point, how sharp I can get it. So I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, my bobbin ran out about halfway down my berry stitching here, but I got it done. Trail or tie, trim, whatever I'm trying to say, trim off these little ends here. The other thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to be very careful about this because I don't want to cut my actual stitches, but I am going to slightly trim this little point just because it'll be a little bit easier to turn inside out. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I'm going to slowly, as you can see, my bobbin got all goofy on me. All right, I'm slowly going to turn this inside out. And I will say, from a hand stitching point of view, if you hand stitch this, you probably don't have to worry about this unless you are just not wanting to see your stitches at all. But if you do, if you hand stitch it, you can do a running stitch or something decorative that you can keep everything on the outside, and you don't necessarily have to turn it inside out like this. So again, I'm going to try to be very, very, very careful. I've got a couple of things here. I'm going to try a knitting needle first. I always hesitate with knitting needles because I always worry that I'm going to either poke through the fabric or something like that. Fortunately, this one's wood, so it's a little less, it's not metal. Let's see if I can, sometimes you can work it with your hand like this too. You just kind of want as nice of a point as you can get. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, it's a berry. It's not an ice cream cone or anything like that, but you do kind of want your point to be as pointy as possible. But there you go. So there's your little cone. And like I said, you know, where she had on her pattern was about right here. just right above the bat's head. I wanted a bit more because when I start stitching this, this is all going to start being pulled in, and I don't want to lose much of the pattern itself when I start pulling the berry in. Okay, so next thing is you want to stitch up the top, and I know you're asking yourself, well, wait a minute, don't you need to stuff it? Well, you do, but you don't want to do that first because then it makes this very, very, very difficult to sew shut. So it's a good idea to go ahead and have your stitches already started and then start stuffing it. I may put you on pause here for just a second. I don't know if I have any polyfill left or not, but I'm going to check really quick and see. So give me just a moment. I'll set that right there. Okay, I do. It's kind of jammed down in something, but I can reach the opening where I can get polyfill out. The other thing I will tell you that I learned as a neat trick is down in the very, 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 very bottom end, a lot of times, you'd be surprised how the polyfill does not fill that point very well. So if you are a multi-crafter like myself, a bit of yarn, your orts, even if you have enough of them laying around, just something to just kind of pack down and fill that space, because when you start putting the polyfill in here, you're not going to be able to get all the way down like you think you are in that little tiny little point. So I am going to go ahead and do that just to make sure that that point is nice and full. The other thing, keep in mind, like I'm using red, which isn't that big of a deal necessarily to me, but if you're using a linen that is very light in color, possibly see-through, whatever you put in that, whatever you fill this with, you could see it through the fabric. So just keep that in mind. Doesn't mean that you can't do something red or pink or green or something if you want a background of sorts to actually kind of show through. But just don't forget about that as you're doing this. Okay, so next thing is, got a big long piece here, and it seems like a really long piece, but it needs to kind of be a long piece. I am going to double this up and knot it at the opposite end, and if I need more, I need more. Hopefully this is enough. But what you're going to do is you're going to start wherever. I'm going to start the back where my sewing ended, because why not? Good a place as any. Okay, there we go. All right, now all you're going to start doing is just a pretty, not loose, but fairly loose running stitch. And if you aren't familiar with the term, it's just basically just an in and out straight stitch. And you just want it to be far enough from the edge of your fabric that when you start to pull, that you aren't going to instead just fray your fabric, and your fabric just ends up being, basically ends up frayed, and then your thread just comes out. If again, if you're using linen instead of Aida, that's what's nice about using Aida, is with berries especially, the fabric has some stability to it. If you're using linen, you might consider using a stabilizer, some kind of heat bond stabilizer, something that you could just iron on the back. And I would do it before you cut your cone shape, not after. So that way the heat bond, the stabilizer, stays all the way to the edge, that you don't miss any sections, especially around here. If you're still worried about your fabric possibly fraying, you can also do some kind of, if you have a sewing machine that does a zigzag stitch, or a if you want to do something to stabilize the edge of the fabric before you start doing this, you can certainly do that as well. And as you can see, hopefully, well, I'm kind of off camera here, sorry guys. I am literally just loosey-goosey kind of running along the edge of this. I'm not following any kind of pattern or line or, you know, every 5, you know, squares or anything like that. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, and I'm just going in, out, in, out, in, out, all the way around the edge of the cone. And the idea being that you just want to give yourself enough space that when you start to pull, it will pull in, but also it's not so close that you get like a really tight, like bunched, I would demonstrate, but I don't want to do all that and then have to take all that back out just to do it right. So, but essentially, if your stitches are too close together, it'll just pucker up like a flower, a closed, you know, flower bud or a purse or something, you know, like one of those drawstring purses or something. It won't actually pull in flat and cinch up at the top like you want it to. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you'll get a different kind of shape. And if you want that kind of shape, that's perfectly fine. But just keep in mind your running stitch, depending on how far apart these stitches are, will determine how either flat or how flat the top is or how pointed the top is. And that, I think that just comes down to personal preference, honestly. I try to find something in between, you know, but this is meant to be a strawberry, you know, type shape. I mean, that's where the pattern name is derived, but you definitely still want something, you know, that you can work with. That looks good. Okay, so I am almost to the end here. I'm almost back where I started. We're doing okay on time, so that's good. The more I think about the other finish, I may do a separate video for that. Not that it, you know, not that it deserves a separate video or anything like that, but I want these to kind of be shorter, not be quite so long. Okay, so I am back around at the end. I am going to run this back through my seam one more time, just because. And then I am slowly going to start pulling on my top. And what, like I said, what you should get is a little bit of a pucker, but you should also, if you need to help it, you know, tell it kind of where you want it to go, that you want it to lay flat, that you don't want it to be pointy. You can do that kind of with your hands. I need to try and, there we go, pull from this other side also and make sure that this side of the berry is also coming closed. Okay, so now as you can see, it's starting to cinch up a bit. I don't want to cut my, I don't want to knot my thread yet or anything like that. The next thing I want to do is go grab some polyfill and start filling this up. And this may look like a lot of polyfill, but just keep in mind, this is, you are going to need a lot. You're going to need a lot more than you realize. So I'm going to take a little bit at a time here and start cramming it in here. Basically like you're stuffing a stuffed animal or a whatever. But you want it to be as taut, as tight, as dense as you can get it. Stuff a bit more in here. And just when you think you're done stuffing, you want to keep stuffing. And I think the more of these videos you watch, the more you hear people say that, and it is the absolute truth. But you do want to get to a point where, now that you've kind of cinched your berry up, of course, as you're doing this, you're it's kind of relaxing again. But you want your berry to basically pull inward and you want it to be as poofy as, I mean, you really do. You see me struggling to keep that in. That's what you want. You want it so tight that it is trying to fight its way back out of your berry. But that, my friends, is how you get your shape. So then at this point, you just have to decide. So see, I still could have gone probably another 1/2 inch on the top to keep the pattern showing, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. The fact that it's nice and tight and stitched, I'm perfectly fine with that. So at this point, what I'm going to do is, I know where my seam is. I'm going to run this back through a couple more times and use it to basically kind of knot itself. And be careful that you don't lose your tension. I'm okay with a little bit of it being lost, but not much. But the more you handle this, the more you need to pay attention with your own, like as you're holding it, what is happening to your berry. Because as you can see, well, yeah, you can kind of see how it's starting to get frayed here. You just want to be sure that you do not lose your stitches. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it back. I've got enough thread here. I'm going to run it all the way back around. Seems kind of redundant. And most people probably don't do this because they're better at this than I am. This is only my second one. But I'm going to run this back through. But obviously now this running stitch is a whole lot easier because my little pleats are there to guide me. And all of this is going to be covered up, so I don't really care that you can actually see it. But see, now I can start pulling on it again and tightening it back up. So all I want to do is get back around to that back seam. So I'm going to do this one more go around here if I can help it, just to make sure I'm getting it all the way back, because I've got plenty of thread to work with. I pulled plenty to do this. And hold on, it's that one. I'm going back through that back seam one more time. Now I'm going to pull it again. I'm going to try to hold this as tight as I can. This is when, if you had a little helper with some hands that you could trust to not get stabbed while they held your strawberry for you, that would be very, very helpful. But basically, I'm just going to run this back through a couple of times through the back. Sorry, you guys, you're not seeing what I'm doing here. Oops, it's a little too low. What I'm trying to do is use the thickness of that seam to support whatever stitches I'm going to do as far as trying to make this a knot. And by using that back seam, then that way I'm not relying on a single piece of fabric. I'm actually relying on, a couple of pieces of fabric doubled up, that kind of thing. So I am just using that as kind of a stronghold to make sure that my stitches stay. Now, I'm going to say this again. Do not cut this. Leave this attached. Because what you're going to do next is you are going to make your topper. Okay, so I am choosing to do a two felt top, so one a little bit smaller than the other. I am going to, so this is roughly 2 1/4 inches square. Yeah, 2 1/4 inches square. So I'm going to go a little bit smaller. I'm going to do a 2-inch square to start. Where's my... And I hope I'm cutting through both pieces, but who knows, or I won't know until I'm pretty much there. Okay. And the only reason why I'm going a bit smaller is you want it to show up. So then at this point, you decide what shape you want. If you want it to be a star, if you want it to be a circle, if you want it to be a flower. At this point, I am just going to start with a circle because I just want to see how much coverage I'm getting with it. And then we'll see kind of what to do with it after that. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. It's meant to be an organic shape. It's not meant to be a it's not meant to be anything major. I think I'm going to stick with that. But what I'm going to do is do this. And if I don't like it, I've got plenty of felt. I can try a bigger piece. And again, I'm just winging it. I am not trying to make it even or square or symmetrical or anything like that. I am just going with the flow here. Okay, so I've still got my okay, I think I'm actually going to go up an inch. Nothing wrong with that. But see, that's exactly what kind of happens with this, is you realize, okay, that's a little too small now that I've started kind of trimming it up. So I'm going to go up an inch. So let's go over here to this corner. Well, maybe not an inch. Let's go 2.5 inches maybe. Let's try 2.5 inch square. Okay, let's try this one. Oh, you probably saw my face there. Okay, let me, one more time, go around, make a circle, or, a round shape. We'll call it a circle because it's, that out of the way. It's a little wobbly on that side. Fix that up. Okay, let's try it again here. 1. And I'm just trying to get it to look like a flower, so if you kind of wanted around, those straight corners, you could absolutely do that. Whatever you want to do. But all you're trying to do is cover up there. That's a little bit better. Okay. So now then, what you're going to do is you're going to come back, and you don't want to, the goal is not to pin the whole thing down, flat. If you want to do that, you may as well just use hot glue, right? But you do want to get in these corners and make sure, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. I'm taking the corner and I'm digging into the fabric just a wee bit and coming out just to pin that corner into place. And I'm going to go all the way around. Now, the first couple are going to be tricky because you're trying to keep your berry, your top centered, and you're trying to also, I'm actually going to go up this time. You're actually also trying to avoid, your stitches showing, so I probably should have gone upwards with the other one, but that's okay. We live and we learn. But essentially, all you want to do is just pin down enough of the felt, or whatever you're using, if you're using fabric, or if you're using, you know, like cotton fabric, or if you're using, you know, some other like linen, you know, in your stash. Maybe you've got some little squares that you wanted to use, quilt cotton, whatever it is. But all you're wanting to do is just grab a little bit of that berry underneath and come up and pin that corner down. And if you do it well, you'll barely notice that your stitches are there. You could even, you know, if you know what felt like, I kind of had an idea that I was going to use red and probably green. So if you wanted to, because you were stitching the top of the berry with it first, you know, nobody's going to see that. So if you wanted to even, you know, pick a thread that would blend in, that would be all right too. But obviously I'm getting just close enough to the edges that I don't really have to worry about that. And then once you get closer to your starting one, you're going to want to make sure you are pinning this down in places that you like your placement of your felt. So I'm trying to get as close to making sure mine is covering the fabric like I want it to. And again, I'm pulling the thread under to find the next spot to grab my stitched fabric, and then just come up really close to the edge of that little corner where I made my cuts. And if you don't have, if you decided to do like a round, you know, first piece of the topper, then just find a spot and make like your little stitch just like that. So now I'm done. I'm back around to the beginning. Trying to get that back tucked underneath there. Okay. Now then, I pulled a couple of different things. Of course, I cut my green, but I also pulled a button. So a lot of people will do just their one little topper and then do their button, and that's it. They'll add little embellishments, which we'll talk about here in a minute, because I've got beads and pins and all kinds of stuff. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can. Uh-oh. I cut that a little too far, but we're going to see if we can make it work. Hold on. Trying to be very, very careful. No, I think I messed that up. I'm going to have to redo that one. Okay, hold on. Hold on, y'all. Let's cut another. Definitely want my 2-inch square on this one because I want it to be slightly smaller. And the nice thing is, too, you can use your berry as a pin cushion if you need to keep your needle from flying away from you. Okay. Let me get this back over here. See if I can cut another 2-inch piece really quick. Because I went kind of bananas with the scissors there. What I was trying to do was, let's see if I can do it this time, not get nuts with it. Trying to see if I could do like a little, like 4 little leaves, but basically use the corners as the points on the leaves. And again, I am just winging this. Whatever you think you have in your head, a lot of times you find that, you know, something you think, you know, something in your mind's eye, you think it might look good, and you get it on there and you're like, no, I don't like that at all. So don't, it's all about trial and error. It's all about just making it work. Again, this is an organic piece. This is not a meant to be perfect. You know, leaves on a tree or leaves on a vine, they're not all exactly the same shape. They're not all exactly the same whatever. But there are mine, and then my little, so all I'm going to do really quick is a couple of these look kind of silly. I mean, just like shape-wise, not like, it's just because of the way I was cutting them. And I could actually wait till I got it back on here and stitched on here before I did it. But this is what I'm going to do with my deal. Okay, so now I know I've got a piece of felt and a button that I've got to get through. So I am basically taking my needle, diving it through the entire fabric and everything, trying to find a spot. But what you don't want to do is you don't want your needle coming out, you know, down here in your fabric. So again, the first couple of stitches are going to be kind of tricky. Sorry, I'm not in the camera. But all I'm trying to do is find a spot underneath this fabric. Here we go. Like this. So that my button and my felt stay on. And again, do the same thing as before. Just bring your needle around. Find a spot underneath here. Nobody's going to see any of that. Nobody's going to care about any of that. All they're going to want to see is your beautiful stitching. And try and get it up through the button. Try to grab the fabric and the felt and whatever else. And then come back down again, the other side. And just try not to come out of your pattern so low that your thread is going to show up on, you know, out here like this piece. Like this piece is. And I don't know, sometimes you can pull, like, especially because like I've got mine doubled up. You might pull one thread or the other just to kind of see, but if not, I will actually take my needle and just, as I work my way back around, kind of snag that bit of thread and then just kind of pull it back up in there. And nobody will know. Okay, so once you've got it how you want it, do your last little stitch out somewhere. And then just decide how you want to tie it off. If you're lucky enough that you got your thread through around to the back, you can do that. If you want to take where you are and run your needle to the back, you can do that really quick. Oops, kind of caught the felt there. Hold on. But just run it, like if you've got enough thread, I've got enough thread that I can actually run it through to the back. And again, that's what's great about like Ada. You can kind of follow where your last stitch came in or out. And if you don't like where it came out right there, find a different little spot. Bring it up a little bit higher so it's not so close to the edge. And now you're going to tie it off. Assuming you have nothing else you want to attach to the top of your and if at any point in time in all of this sewing you determine you do not have enough thread to finish what you're doing, my advice would be make sure you've got 5 or 6 inches that you can work with to tie a knot. Find a spot, you know, secret it away underneath everything where you can tie your knot. And usually what I do is I tie my knot and then I feed the thread back through just to get that knot down. Okay, now I'm kind of worried about this piece of thread here. And then clip my thread once I've run it through the fabric. Okay, but for the most part, that's not going to show up. My red piece probably still isn't as big as I'd like, but that'll do. Okay, so that's my berry. At this point, if you wanted to, I know some people put like ribbon hangers. You could do that. I was trying to see if I had a piece of ribbon. Just took a bunch of ribbon and put it away. I can kind of show you with, hold on. Okay, so I've got this little piece here just to kind of show you. If you wanted to do a little hanger in with your sewing on here, you could attach this maybe like below, you know, your button so it's hidden hidden underneath. I don't necessarily want, you know, something like that, but you've basically sewn the ribbon in. You could also tie it. You could even do, hold on, I'll show you. You could even do like a slip knot kind of thing. Or if I can get it to work, probably not, because it's so close to the edge. But basically, you know, and actually, it's surprisingly that's holding. But you know, you could pull. What I was trying to say was you could pull it through. Let's see if I can get it to work this time. Oops. I'm really not good at this in front of the camera, but okay, whatever. But basically, run a slip knot through it. You could also do, instead of, you know, something wide like a ribbon, you could definitely do embroidery, you know, thread, something a little bit looser, or not looser, but tinier, smaller. Okay, and then after this, usually what people like to do is pins. So what I've got are a bunch of different kinds of pins. If you took, if you went to Jingle Ball and you took Beth Twist's class, and you have your little bank pins, that would be really cute. Especially like this one, because this one's not real Christmassy. The other two I had definitely had more Christmassy, you know, Christmas tree and red and green or whatever. But if you wanted to do that, you absolutely could. But usually what I do with mine is I like to at least find the multicolored ones and pin down the corners where where my stitches were, or pin down the edges where my stitches aren't, so that my petals don't fly up necessarily and you know, all the gobbledygook underneath I was trying to hide doesn't show up. Can certainly do that. And then that way my little green ones can be left kind of flapping. Trying to find the red ones to match my felt, just so they don't show up as easily or as obviously. But they're still really cute. But yeah, if you took Beth Twist's class at Jingle Ball, you learned about bank pins. Good grief, y'all. Which is what she provided, especially if you purchase the full kit and not just the class. Bank pins can be found, apparently, you know, online, you know, on online retailers that sell, you know, like Amazon. I really don't do Amazon anymore if I can help it, but places like Amazon and the like, or probably some craft stores. But the first thing I ever heard of was the corsage pins, because they are extra long. See, like these, if you can tell the difference. These pins, that corsage pin goes probably twice as long. It's just your standard, you know, like these are Dritz brand from Joann's. But I also found they have really cute, like, shapes. So these are hearts. So maybe I'll do a red, a white, and a green. There's a white one. I'm trying not to stab myself. These, I don't think these are corsage pins, but they might be. They're quite a bit longer than those other ones were. Trying to get the thing closed, hopefully without stabbing myself. I kind of stuck myself earlier when I was doing some stuff at the sewing machine. Not for this, but for something else. And stabbed myself a little bit. And so there you go. Something like that. You know, and try to figure out, you know, where the center of your pattern is. Is that where you want it? But yeah, I was going to, but I don't think I am anymore. I had some, you know, just multifaceted beads I was going to glue, but I really kind of like the hearts, honestly. So I think I'm going to stick with that, because I think that looks really cute. So that is my finish, y'all. yeah, this tutorial was definitely longer than I kind of hoped it would be, but I kind of thought maybe it might be. These felt scraps also make really good for the bottom of your berry. You know, whatever floats your boat. I'm kind of fiddling with this now just to kind of show you. I'm kind of being ridiculous, but I like it. There we go. Just because I like it over there. I don't know why, but I do. But that's it. Sorry, this is a mess back here, but hopefully you can see now. That's my little berry finish with my little leaves and my little pins. And this was, now as you can see, I kind of pulled it kind of tight with the sewing machine there. If you're worried about that, you can do a decorative stitch. You can don't use a thread that's different or similar. Sorry, not different. Use a thread that's the same color as your fabric, so that hides. But you could certainly do like some kind of decorative stitch to cover that up if you wanted to. I've seen a lot of people do like a herringbone or something like that. But yeah, this turned out really, really adorable. I like it. It's very, very just kind of, yeah, me. Just very, very cutesy, very whimsical, very, you know, off the beaten path, not like everything else, you know, just kind of doing my own thing. That's how I like my stuff. So, and I mentioned this was a Fortnite Fabric ornament cut. These were also the colors I brought over a minute ago. These were a lot of the colors that I used for my berry. All Roxy Floss Co. With a couple of exceptions because, and I don't know if you can really tell here, you kind of can. I kind of wanted to test to see. So I actually used DMC B5200, I think is what Michelle called for originally, up against Roxy Floss Co. Weathered White, just to kind of see if there was a difference. And there's subtle, not enough to really tell, but there is a difference. And I think some of the original stitch that I did for the ladybug, I used 310, but then immediately switched over to, I think this is charcoal, Roxy Floss Co. charcoal. Again, just to kind of see if you could tell. And as far as I mean, it isn't side by side or anything, but I mean, if I didn't tell you, I don't know that you would know. So yeah, y'all, I hope you really enjoyed this. I'm going to, this is Saturday, March the 9th. Michelle's birthday is tomorrow, March the 10th. So we're kind of doing all of this sharing on the socials for her birthday, either stuff that we've stitched, finished, or stuff that we're working on, stuff we're starting, you know, those kinds of things. So if you happen to see this on March 10th and the day is not over and you have been stitching on, or you have finished in the recent past a Bendy Stitchy designs, use the hashtag Bendy birthday. That's what we're using. This is kind of being run, hosted, masterminded by Michelle, the Chinook Crafter, over on Instagram. And then there are just a bunch of the rest of us that decided to contribute, and this is one of my contributions. So like I said, I'm going to finish the other one as a bag, but I think I'll do that as a separate video, and if all goes well, I will upload that one as well. So happy stitching all, and if you got any questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments, and I'll see if I can point you in the right direction or get an answer for you if you so need it. Talk to you soon. Y'all take care.